We got a couple of horses in the field this week in the PGA Tour for the Texas Children's Houston Open. It is Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy topping the charts for this week, and then a pretty massive drop-off after them for the rest of this field. We're going to break down our thoughts on Scheffler v. McIlroy versus the field, whether there's value in either of those guys to win this week, and where else to find value in our top DFS picks for this week as well. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Brandon Gdula. You can find him on X at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula as well. Check out his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, I'm assuming you're laughing because I told you I'd mess up the name of the tournament yesterday, and I did within the first 2 seconds of the show. Is that why you were chuckling immediately out of the gate?
Yeah. I said that you wouldn't mess it up, that I believed in you.
We've been doing this show for like 9 years. How did you think I would get through saying it an entire show without once saying the most impossible tournament name to say?
But I said I believe in you, and then I just forgot about it.
Why would you do that? This is on you, bro. So we have a lot of like head-to-head bets on the show. This should count for my record that I was right and you were wrong about whether I'd mess up. Like, yeah, I could influence it. So it's kind of like a non-regulated, non-good market that I could throw. But I'm a professional podcaster who would never do that. B, we take things very seriously on this show. I would not intentionally mess up. And 3, I can't remember if I went A, B, or 3. I just watched Inglourious Basterds, so we'll go to 3. Number 3, professionals. So I would never on purpose. No, 3 glasses. I would never on purpose mess it up.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't. I just had forgotten about it, and then it was so immediate that it all came back, and it was hard to keep it together.
If we were actual professionals, I'd re-record it, but we're not. And I don't care enough because we're just here to talk golf. And so it's fine.
Well, I mean, speaking of finding it though, that's what Victor Hovland did last week. So
how? I mean, yeah, but where did this come from? I know he still had some bad shots, and that's what he said after. He's like, yeah, I still didn't play very well, but I won. It's nice. And it's and they start talking about death. I don't know. He went a lot of places across Sunday. I had JT for win picks. I was very sad as a result of that. JT, despite having the sub-ideal draw from a wind perspective, did still almost win that event. So wild ride across the entirety, honestly, of Thursday through Sunday for that one.
Yeah. I looked at Hovland too, and I didn't see it enough. And frankly, it was a little gratifying because he was like, I didn't really, I don't know. Less gratifying was, of course, you for JT, but for me, I got to, so look, last week we were recording the end of the show. Everything went to heck. But we had some other stuff to do, so we didn't get to stick around. Turns out it was based on tee times and the wind. So that changed a lot. So I went back, updated my article on FanDuel Research, my favorite bets, just to see what else I could figure out based on the new information. I got the Jacob Bridgman. Thought he might get it done, but he did not. So, I mean, I feel like we've been knocking on the door. Yeah. Feels like, something's going to turn around, hoping for a good major season. But, I mean, this week, it was kind of a frustrating, research process because we got Scotty and we got Rory, and then, boy, things fall off. And even in the markets, with the market without Scotty and Rory, Aaron Rye's the favorite at plus 2,000. So you got to pick and shoot. I kind of am likening it to a 3-horse race. The first horse being Scotty, the second being Rory, and the third sort of being the field because nobody else is standing out. So I think we got a lot to dig into this week for the Texas Children's Houston Open.
Wow. At least one of us is a professional nailing the name of the tournament that I have written 16 times across the past 24 hours. I'm going to hand over hosting duties to you at some point. We're going to dive into our thoughts on the Texas Children's Houston Open in a second, breaking down our thoughts on the course, talking about who has done well here in the past, Scotty versus Rory versus the field, and much more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast. We're here every Tuesday, breaking down our thoughts on that week's PGA Tour event, breaking down our best bets and DFS picks there. FanDuel Research Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on the FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page. Appreciate those of you watching there as always. Leave us a thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe, and turn on notifications to get notified as we post each of these videos each throughout the week. And also check out some shorts, YouTube shorts, as we break down little mini clips from the show as well to get prepared for that week's PGA Tour event. Also, if you want some thoughts on college basketball, we're doing that over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. Talked to Riley Thomas today about the men's round of 16, Aiden Cotter tomorrow about the women's side of things. Maybe I'll talk MLB opening day. Who can say? We're freewheeling, free spirits over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. If you want some bracket thoughts, check out that over there. This bracket season, FanDuel is letting you make the call because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That is 200 extra bucks to bet on everything from clutch shots to last-second heartbreaks, and even who is cutting down the nets. If you've been waiting to join, there is no better time. There's tourney action almost every day, and FanDuel has amazing bet types like spreads, totals, game props, and so much more. So visit the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and get in on the college hoops action all tourney long. Must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Help Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look now at this week's Texas Children's Houston Open and get our thoughts on the course, which is at Memorial Park Golf Course, a long one, 7,475 yards and a par 70. There will be 155 golfers in the field this week. The top 65 plus ties made the cut after the first 2 rounds, so a lot of guys will miss the cut this week. The course has hosted this event since 2019. Last year was the first time it was moved around the calendar. It was in March, previously held in November, so some differences in when this course has been hosting this tournament. Also different courses if you dig back beyond 2019. It's a lot to handle from that perspective. But Brandon, from the data we have at Memorial Park Golf Course, what should people know about how this course plays?
Yeah, this one is kind of a bear to like dig into. Just in terms of like not only like yes, it started here in 2019, but it was like the 2020 season because it was in November. So like even that is like it's sort of a whichever way you want to spin it, but this one, despite having 4 years of data, is about as hard as it gets in terms of like the takeaways, especially because we had just the 1 year last year of the change to the calendar. But what we do know is that it is long, over 7,400 yards, as you mentioned. It's around 350 yards longer than the average par 70. It's got narrow fairways, but larger greens. Average green size, 7,000 square feet. PGA Tour average just over 6,000 square feet with the POA overseed greens. Recent winning scores, 12 under last year, 16 under, 10 under, and 13 under prior to that. You know, cut line around even par +1. It's not the easiest course. Part of that is to do with the length, but it's also, these narrow fairways. So kind of an interesting setup here. And what I think we really see is you got to be a good golfer to play well here. And that sounds like so straightforward. And I'm not saying like this is Augusta or like this is a US Open. It's not like that, but there are certain golfers who are really good golfers but aren't specialists. And so someone like Mackenzie Hughes comes to mind. He's played well here. He's a really good golfer. He just doesn't hammer it. He's not like I mean, he's a short game specialist, but that's not really like what we really mean by specialist now is like one of the 10 best iron players or someone who just hits it like 350 off the tee. So it's really interesting to sort of dig into. And again, so like whenever you look at past winners, you don't really see anything particularly stand out. Like Steven Yeager won last year. He was 37th in strokes gained off the tee, 38th in approach, 9th around the green, and 3rd in putting, but only 41st in accuracy. So it wasn't even like he hit every fairway necessarily. Conversely, Tony Finau was second when he won. He was second in off the tee, 9th in approach, so much better ball striking numbers. 28th around the green, 2nd in putting, won by 4 shots, led in fairways gained. So like there's a bunch of different ways you can kind of go to having success here. And while like I am going to simplify my key stats, it's really all 4 strokes gained stats. So off the tee, approach, around the green, and putting, as well as proximity from 200 plus yards. So I'm bumping up and adding to the list, which is pretty rare. Strokes gained around the green. It's not that it's as important or more important than approach or off the tee or putting, but it is more important than usual. So when I kind of see someone really struggle around the green, I'm probably going to try to step away if I can. But really, like, it's a good all-around test. The three of the 5 par 3s are short, under 185 yards, but there's a ton of long par 4s. So like distance is helpful, but it's not a must necessarily. If you look back at, the recent performance, some long par 5s. So I don't know, like when I dig into this and I try to account for everything, I just see like a bit of everything. What are you seeing here for Memorial Park?
Well, I think that I want to like dig more into the around the green numbers and kind of flesh out that for a second, because a lot of times when we're looking at what golfers have done recently, we're looking at true strokes gained at data golf, and that looks at all 4 strokes gained numbers combined. And a lot of times when we do that, we'll be skeptical of guys who are feasting around the greens. Like, this person's at 0.71 strokes gained per round around the green. Maybe I don't want to buy into their overall numbers. I think that kind of my tweak for this week is manually bumping those golfers down less than I would. Like, yeah, they're not going to gain as much as they have around the green, but I'm not going to be as skeptical of like general regression of those golfers as I otherwise would be. That's kind of the way that I've applied what you were talking about with around the green mattering a bit more than it typically would. Is that kind of an okay way to phrase it in your eyes?
Look, I thought around the green play was going to matter a lot last week at a difficult setup, and Victor Hovland, who's really going through it with the short game, went out and won. Around the green play is really volatile, so like it's not that you're either great or terrible one week to the next.
Mhm.
There's more to it than just that, but I think it's fine if you are more okay with short sample surges and around the green play than typical. There's kind of one name over. I like to look at 50 rounds.
Yeah.
To me, it balances some short-term and long-term data together. There's kind of one name I'm interested in among like the studs who struggles around the green, and that's Taylor Pendrith. I don't know that it's enough. Sort of, we'll talk about him plenty. It's not enough necessarily to move away, but I don't love it, right? Like Tony Finau, I guess Sung J M is probably a better example. His irons are subpar right now,
Mhm.
but he's been pretty good around the green. How much does that matter? I still would rather go with someone like Pendrith, who's substantially better right now with his irons, but has the short game struggles. So that's why I tried to like editorialize it so much where
Yeah.
it matters more, but it's not like it's a cross off if you're bad. And it's also not like you want to sort by around the
Correct.
green,
Yeah.
because that's not you're gonna find guys who are bad ball strikers who are good around the green. If I do this over the last 50 rounds, yeah, okay. I'll do it ranks because it's simpler. The leader right now, last 50 around the green, Beau Hossler. He's outside the top 100 in approach and off the tee in that span. Same for Peter Malnati, who's second. Andrew Novak's third around the green. He's outside the top 40 in both ball striking stats, and so on. So
Yeah.
it's so hard to factor in around the green play without overweighting it. But it is part of the puzzle this week. And frankly, guys who lose a lot around the green probably are going to struggle this week. But that's kind of always the case too.
Now, weirdly, as you alluded to, there is a guy who has been pretty good around the green and actually has gained more strokes on his short game than he has with his ball striking across the past 6 months. That's Tony Finau. And Tony Finau is a guy who has had good history here at Memorial Park Golf Club, of course, is a past winner here as well. Brandon, who else stands out to you when you look at the best golfers at this small sample we have at Memorial Park Golf Course?
Yeah, so it's a small sample. I like to dig back to 5 years. This time it's going to be 4, but Finau leads the way. He's was runner-up last year after winning. He missed the cut, though, before that and was 24th. He has gained strokes tee to green in all facets in all 4 starts. Last year, he was runner-up with terrible putting, which I know, it's Tony Finau. He does need to work on his numbers from within 15 feet, but he's not a terrible putter long-term. Yeah. He did miss the cut at the Players with some terrible iron play, which is sort of indicative of some of his trends right now, but long-term, he's a good iron player. And I would just ask, do you think Tony Finau's done being a good iron player? Probably not. So I'm expecting a little bit of a bounce back. He was T36 at the Arnold Palmer, 5th at Genesis, and T13 at Pebble prior to that. I do kind of want to pause on Finau, but I'm going to talk about him more later. So I don't know if it's necessarily worth it.
Let's do it now because I think he's interesting, at least. Because if we look at the odds board at FanDuel Sportsbook this week, and we'll talk about Rory and Scotty in a second, but you got Scotty Scheffler plus 350, Rory is 7-1. Then there's this big gap down to everyone else. Aaron Rai 28. Then you got JJ Spawn, Tony Finau 33. And the way you view that second tier is relevant both for betting and for DFS. Personally, I don't see anybody who really emerges in that group as being like the guy. And part of that's because I'm skeptical of Finau's current form. If you could buy into Finau's form, you combine with the course history, you could say, okay, of this group, I feel best about Finau. I'm not there personally. Are you seeing enough from Finau to feel like he winds up standing out relative to the second tier?
I think he's the standout name here. Okay. Due to the fact that Tony Finau might just be a really good golfer who's got some limitations. And those limitations might be certain courses and the questions that they ask you to answer. They might be conditions. But I kind of feel like, and maybe I need to dig into some data on this, but I feel like Tony Finau at courses where he's had success more sustainably has success than other golfers, if that makes sense of the archetype I'm thinking about, where you think he's too good of a golfer to be that course dependent and sensitive, but it does kind of feel that way wherever Finau plays pretty well, he plays pretty well. And yes, his irons weren't good at the Players, and his form is kind of up and down in terms of the finishes, but I mentioned those 2 top 15s at Pebble and the Genesis, his irons are still good. He just had a terrible week at the Players. His driver's still pretty good. It's a little more volatile than you'd want. He's a pretty good around the green player, and his putter just gets hot. He's kind of like a poor man's Colin Morikawa in that sense, where you don't really expect the tee to green numbers to be bad. You would expect if you could sort of have a market where you say, does Tony Finau gain strokes tee to green? The odds are going to be in his favor that he does, but he can either be top 10 in putting or kind of bottom 10. And that's part of it. I think that's a good enough profile from a volatility standpoint where, yes, of these names that are on the board here, I love Aaron Rai. He's just too consistent. He's like a Tommy Fleetwood. JJ Spawn, His putter can come and go as well, even though his irons are great right now. Like of these names, Tony Finau is the guy here who I want some exposure to. I'd probably put Jason Day second in terms of actual win juice, which is no slight to Wyndham Clark, but Jason Day is playing some pretty good golf too.
And Wyndham Clark banged up, withdrew with the neck from the Players and missed TGL because of the neck too. So not fully healthy right now. Would you bet me Spawn versus Finau, just like finishing position?
So I have a historically atrocious track record on these on the fly head to heads, but I will take it because I believe in Tony this week.
Okay, not DFS points because there's a big discrepancy there. Like for DFS, Finau's better because his salary is a lot lower than Spawn's, if I recall. Yeah, Spawn is 11.6, Finau is 10.8. So DFS, it's not apples to orange, or it is apples to oranges. For betting, though, they're both 33-1. Mixed with the saying there, but I like Spawn most of this group personally in that second tier. Now, if you look at a course history, Scotty Scheffler does stand out too. I want to reserve discussion of him for the current form section, but you can kind of run through Scheffler, what he's done here, and then also talk about other guys with good course history too.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be someone that we'll talk about a lot throughout the show, but he's got the Texas narrative as well here. But second, 9th, 2nd, and 32nd for him. He finished T20 at the Players, was 11th at the API, 3rd at Genesis, 25th in Phoenix, and 9th at Pebble. And it really feels like he's struggling despite reeling off all those great finishes. His irons really are on fire. The short game and the putter kind of up and down. And for anybody who's watched Scotty lately, he seems to be going through it with the putting, and it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in me. But we'll talk more about him later. Next up on the list is Mackenzie Hughes. He did get the Canadian flag emojis. There's kind of a lot of those this week, heads up. But 14th, 16th, 29th, and 7th. He's got good wedges and a good short game, which has helped him here. Form right now is a little bit up and down, but was 36th at Valspar. Missed the cut at the Players, but 22nd at API. I think he's an interesting name from a DFS value standpoint because if you do try to jam in Scotty and Rory, Mackenzie Hughes is going to look like a superstar to try to make that happen based on salaries. Aaron Rise next up, 7th, 7th, and 19th in his 3 starts. He's been T4 at Mexico, 11th at API, and 14th at the Players. He's putted really well here the last 2 years. Really consistent player. Steven Yeager, last year's winner, was also 9th and 35th, co-led after the first round at Valspar last week. He's a really good putter. Salary is $10,400 for him. Just below that at 10,000 is Maverick McNeely, who's got a 27th and 19th and a 20th. Really, really bad iron play at the Players to miss the cut after missing at Arnold Palmer with terrible wedge play, but was 9th in Phoenix, 2nd at the Genesis prior to that. He's a really streaky player. Seems like week to week he can kind of be on or off. Davis Riley's got 3 top 30s as well. Salary's only $8,400. He was 14th here last year. Joel Damon did miss the cut last year, but 2 top 10s otherwise. Salary's $8,300. The putter is dreadful right now, so hopefully he can get that figured out. Jason Day kind of alluded to him earlier. Missed cut last year, but 16th, 54th, and 7th. Finished T8 at the Arnold Palmer last time out with great putting. Was 13th at Pebble. Before that, and 50th at the Genesis. And then Alex Smalley, 9,900 is the salary for him. Missed the cut last year, but 4th and 15th. Other than that, MC'd the Valspar with bad irons, which actually ended a streak for him of 4 straight top 25 finishes. He's been top 25 in 6 of his 8 starts in 2025. So he's either been missed cut in 2 or top 25 in the other 6. So kind of a lot of ways to go here. Definitely not the most robust list of names, just because there's only been 4 years here. But who jumps out to you from this list?
Yeah, I can't get to Davis Riley. I'm going to talk about the value plays here. I can't get to Riley because the ball striking has been so bad recently. I did want to talk about Hughes, though. Mackenzie Hughes hasn't had good ball striking, but it's been I think the word I would use is acceptable. And then I guess if I say a phrase as opposed to word acceptable enough, is he kind of a guy you find yourself passable? Is he a guy you find yourself gravitating towards in that value range, given we'll be there a lot if we decide to jam in both Rory and Scotty?
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not, like, then it's a pretty typical week because
Yeah.
if you're not trying to get both, and I guess we should kind of clarify here, Scheffler's salary is 14,000 and Rory's is 13.2. So like it's not like it's Scheffler at 13.2 and Rory at like 12.6 or something like that. It's even if you just go with Rory, you're going to be in this tier a lot. But yes, Hughes does enough. So yeah, if you start with Rory, you're at 93.60 for your final 5 golfers on average. Not to say you just have to stick in that tight band or anything, but Hughes is going to fit really any type of build this week. I mentioned him already as like a good golfer, who I just think he's like one of the better golfers who's would really benefit from just being long off the tee, I guess,
Yeah.
for how good his short game is. But he is jumping out to me. I'm going to talk a lot about him, and I would probably say he's one of, if not my favorite, values for the week.
Okay. Let's talk now about the Rory and Scotty discussion because as we transition to the current form section, there is really nobody in their league right now from a form perspective. So, what does the data say about those two and how are we handling them both from a betting and a DFS perspective?
Yeah, so if you go to Data Golf's True Strokes Gain query over the last 3 months, it's kind of an absurd split where Rory leads the way. Not that surprising. He's at a plus 2.95 true strokes gain per round, which adjusts for field strength, basically suggests that he would beat an average male professional golfer by 3 shots per round right now, which is sick. And Scotty, for his putting concerns, even in this sample, he's a positive putter. He's at a 2.37. And then it's a fall off to JJ Spawn at 1.8 and Aaron Rise at a 1.53. And those are the only 4 names above a 1.5. And basically, Rory then is twice as good as everyone but 2 other names in this recent sample. That's how good it is. That is why these numbers are so short in terms of the outright odds, with Scotty Scheffler at plus 350 at FanDuel Sportsbook and Rory at plus 700. Let's pause here. Let's talk about the 2 big dogs. Give me your thoughts.
Why is the gap so big between Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy right now? Answer me that first. That's my first question: is why is Scheffler plus 350 while Rory is 7-1?
I still think that you have to factor in the long-term aspect here, and how you do that is always a big part of just sort of like what samples matter in golf. You'll find, ask 10 people, you'll probably find 10 different answers. The reality is he's still like 0.7 shots per round better over the last year than Rory is. I know Rory's playing better golf right now than he has been, but the other thing here is Rory's putting well. His irons are still really good, but they're not as good as Scotty's. And if you're going to build anything based on what's bankable, Scotty still has a better sort of short-term profile. With that said, my model, what?
I might push back on that part. Go ahead, though.
No, go ahead. Push back.
So you were talking about like Scotty has a more bankable profile based on short-term data. Is that, did I interpret that correctly?
Depends on what you mean by short-term, but yes.
So you've done research on stabilization points of different strokes gain stats. So past 24 off the tee, 36 approach, and then 50 around the green and putting. If you look at their numbers in both those splits, Rory is actually at 2.73 in strokes gain stabilization. Scotty Scheffler 2.64. So Rory has a slight lead there. I'm not saying that Rory is a better, if we're projecting forward, I would rank Scotty above Rory. I just don't think that Scotty should be at 22% to win when Rory's at 12.5%. I think that gap is a good amount larger than it should be.
I'm going to say this. I agree with you where I think the gap is large based on the eye test. When I model this thing out, I have Rory right around plus 700 So spoiler alert, I like Rory this week at that number. I have Scotty around plus 380. That's not that far off. So to me, I think these numbers are accurate, even though right now I would rather take Rory at 7-1, not having a model. Just be like, I think Rory's playing better golf.
Yeah.
I will just say, like Scotty's putting, despite his reactions, it's still
been okay.
solid.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. And Rory's putting really, really well.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna say this: Rory's a good putter.
Yeah.
People tend to kind of think he's not a good putter. It drives me nuts. He's a really
He's
good
phenomenal.
putter. His wedges aren't as good as Scotty's, like the chipping,
Correct.
the around the green stuff, and the irons are better for Scotty. So I still would argue. I know the stabilization stuff, and it's kind of like, hey man, I wrote the book on that, like, but it depends specific, like on which samples you're willing to look at, and it's not, you can't model things out based on that stabilization point, because you're going to find, I mean, who's third through like fifth there, and how does that rank compared to other names?
Do
Like,
you
does
want
it
to
pass
know?
the eye test?
Do you want to know?
Yeah.
Michael Kim is second or third.
So like, okay, let's pause there. Would you rather sort of long term bet Michael
No.
Kim or Tony Finau?
I would rather, well, long term.
Like,
How long?
if you're
Can I give Michael Kim like a month off to rest first?
okay, who's fourth and
I
fifth?
just feel bad for the guy. I can't bet Michael Kim. Spawn is fourth, followed by my guy Taylor Pendrith.
Okay.
Like, I'm not saying that this is like I'm going to put this as the only input you'd have in a model. I'm just saying that Rory is not that far off Scotty the past 6 months. I think he's 0.2 strokes behind the past 6 months. Less,
Yes.
but yeah, 0.25.
But about 0.5 shots per round tee to green, which is a little more
Well,
bankable.
putting matters too. Come on.
Yes.
This is not the 2018 version of the podcast. And Rory is better at stabilization. So I think the gap should be smaller, even if I think that Scotty is better.
I'm just sticking up for Scotty here with the
Yeah.
caveat that I prefer Rory at this number, and I don't think it's egregious, and I don't think it's like let me put it this way. I don't think it's to the point yet where we say, wow, Rory is so much better than Scotty that this should be even.
Yeah.
Or
no, I think that it should
Rory's
be
favor.
like Rory should be plus 650 and Scotty should be like 450 or 5. That's kind of the way that I'd view the gap personally.
That's fine.
Okay.
But we can just take a little benefit a little bit and see Rory at a longer number.
No complaints here. I will say that. Who else stands out as far as current form for you?
So I mentioned, Rory and Scotty above a 2, JJ Spawn at a 1.8, Aaron Ride at 1.53. But really what we're looking for here is sort of value golfers. So with salaries of 10,000 or lower on FanDuel with the best form. Right now it's Jacob Bridgman, but he's down at a 1.36. Salary's only 9,300. So that's kind of accounted for there. I was third at Valspar despite losing with approach, which you don't love to see. Hot putter, though, was T21 here in his only start last year. Alex Smalley he's like I should probably like cross-reference the two-timer list here, but he also was on the event history list, but did miss the cut at the Valspar with bad irons. But again, he's been finishing top 25 pretty much every other time he's teed it up. Again, 6 top 25s, 2 missed cuts in 2025. Another Canadian flag emoji for Nick Taylor. Missed the cut at the Players to end a 6-event streak of T33 or better in 2025, and does include a win at the Sony Open. He's been T41 and missed the cut at Memorial Park in his 2 starts. Thomas Dietrich is next on the list. He won in Phoenix. His salary is $9,800. T22 at Valspar after missing the cut both at the API and the Players. It's kind of a hot, cold sort of player. But was T2 here last year with like kind of all short game. Lee Hodges, 8,800 is the salary. He's at a 1.16 true strokes gain per round, so same as Dietrich for $1,000 less in salary. T35 or better in 4 of his 5 starts in 2025, but hasn't played since a T57 in Phoenix. 46th in missed cut in his 2 starts at Memorial Park. He's a hot putter. Irons are kind of okay. So it is what it is. Sam Ryder, 8,700 is the salary. He's at a 0.98, so we're dropping under a shot per round. He's got consecutive top 20s at the Players and the Valspar. He's a great putter. Around the green numbers aren't ideal. Missed cut, T64 in 3 starts at this track. And then rounding out the list, we have Maverick McNeely right at 10,000. He's your boy. 0.92 strokes gained per round over the last 3 months. Also talked about him in the course form section, so maybe something to note there. Really bad iron play at the Players to miss the cut again in API with the wedge issue, but was 9th in Phoenix and 2nd at the Genesis, just sort of as a refresher. So I think you could do worse. It's going to depend a lot on your lineup construction and how much you prefer, from a betting standpoint, if you want to get in on Rory or Scotty. Otherwise, you might just be peppering as many names as you can tolerate in that mid-range. So who here jumps out?
Yeah, it's a lot of the guys you discussed at the beginning. Bridgman, $9,300, a guy I'm very in on for this week. Smalley, 99. I don't know if I'll be in that range very often. Frankly, I doubt I'll be in that range. But like if I were there, I'd be cool with him or McNeely, frankly, at 10,000. And then Nick Taylor, 92, I think is one of the better plays this week, but also in play for betting. I think that Nick Taylor is someone I'm okay with for both formats this week, just based on how good that iron play has been. He's a guy that I want to buy into in all formats. Let's discuss the weather for this week. Unfortunately, gonna be a talking point once again. There are high rain odds throughout the day, both on Thursday and Friday. Friday could be thunderstorms, which would lead to delays, which makes it tougher to wave stack. And I think both waves will be pretty equally in a blender this week. So a lot of wind both days. It's still decently windy, the chance of rain over the weekend too. So I'm expecting delays this week. I'm expecting rain all week. I'm expecting wind. Could lead to more volatility, which might make it dumber for me to back Rory, but I'm probably going to do that anyway. So let's talk about our betting, our best bets for this week at the Texas Children's Houston Open. Let's begin things with the outrights, Brandon. You look at the outright odds of FanDuel Sportsbook. Who do you think are the best bets for this week?
So again, my model thinks Scotty's around plus 380 with Rory at around plus 700. And then whenever that happens and you have like 1 or 2 or 3 big favorites and they're really close, you tend not to see a lot of value elsewhere, which is pretty much what I'm seeing. That puts me on Rory McIlroy this week at plus 700. Yes, means he's got to go back to back in his starts and get a 3rd win in 5 starts. But again, I think this is basically Scotty, Rory, and the field as like the 3. And like, yeah, that's kind of obvious. But with the lack of standouts outside of these top 2, it makes me want to get in where I see enough, and that's with Rory. We kind of, I don't know, we argued a little bit, but it was mostly for the sake of like why I think Scotty still deserves to be the favorite. But I like Rory at 7-1 better than Scotty at plus 350. He's not like Rory's not doing anything poorly. He hardly ever does. But he is in better form over the last 3 months than Scotty by about 0.5, 0.6 shots per round. Nobody else is particularly close. Nobody's within a shot per round compared to Rory in that span. The game is dialed in. He doesn't have the course knowledge, but not too many people do, and I don't think that's going to matter too much for Rory this week. So when I look at the top of the board, and I don't just mean Scotty and Rory, I mean like the top 4 or 5 names, Rory's the name that I want to get in on. I know it's only plus 700, but this is a relatively weak field, and I think you're getting Rory at a number that you might see him in different fields as well, if that makes sense. So I like Rory this week, most of anyone.
That's the same for me. It's the same thought process you alluded to at the end too, where this number is not that much shorter than what we typically see Rory at. I think it's kind of an underreaction to how good he's been because he's finding different ways to win. He's talking about like being more of an artist on the course versus like a masher, which I think is encouraging heading into Augusta, but also just good in general. Cause like at the Players, he didn't have his like superpower off the tee. He was not picking up a bunch of strokes driving, and he still won that event. Again, the numbers for him are very good despite being just okay there. The fact that he won despite not having his best stuff, I found that super encouraging. So I'm on board with you. I think that Rory 7-1 should be a little bit shorter, and I'm willing to back him at that number for this week too.
He's plus 750 to win the US Open. He's plus 600 to win the Masters.
Oof. I told you, I think I talked about this in the show after the Players, but I spent the Sunday before the playoff, like looking around for Masters prices on Rory. I couldn't get one I was willing to bite on. And I kind of wish I had now because it's shortened still since then.
So yeah, I think if memory serves, he's plus 750 for the US Open and the PGA, plus 700 for the Open and plus 600 for the Masters. And he's plus 700 here at the Texas Children's Houston Open. So I like Rory this week. It's no slight to Scotty or anyone else, but Rory's my guy for the week.
Okay. So we're both on Rory McIlroy 7-1. Which other outrights do you like this week?
Well, you hate him now, but Tony Finau at 33-1. I do kind of firmly just think that for as good as he is, we know what the limitations are. It's not just winning, it's maybe translating his game to certain places. And he's shown us that this is a good course for him. He's won here. He should really be the back-to-back champ if he putted at all last year with how much better he was. Tee to green, he was better than everyone else by at least half a shot per round. Tee to green last year just didn't have the putting numbers. His putting splits from within 15 feet since the start of last year aren't where I want them. But if you kind of zoom out, you kind of see enough with Finau. He is 9th in this field in approach play over his last 50 rounds. He's 6th in overall strokes gained tee to green in that span. I don't think he's a bad iron player after what happened at the Players. I don't think that's gone. And Tony Finau, he's really hard to model because the putter is either on or it's not. And I understand the irony of pointing out that he should have won last year if he just made some putts, but this to me is the best number and sort of narrative and everything for anyone outside the top two. It's like Finau kind of being forgotten about a bit at a course where he's played well, coming off of a terrible performance at the Players. I think now is totally fine to get back in on Tony Finau at 33-1, especially if starting a card with Rory, I can still get there at 33 and then kind of go from there. So I'm not trying to get back in on anybody shorter than this, but Finau for me, he does enough for me to want to be there at 33-1.
Yeah, I made a joke about it earlier, saying that he's gained more strokes with his short game than his ball striking recently in the past 6 months. That's probably not going to stick. And I think honestly, that's a positive for him. If the short game can be, he's always been a good around the green player. It's always been the putting. So if the short game can be good and he can kind of get back to that ball striking, which he could, that bodes well for him. So although I like Spawn more and I'm willing to do that head to head still, I understand the case for Tony. I'm just not there myself at 33-1. So your two outrights, Tony Finau 33-1, Rory McIlroy at 7. I want to dip down a little bit further after Scotty and Rory and go to a guy we have talked about pretty much ad nauseum ever since the turn of the calendar. That's Taylor Pendrith. Once again, I am in on Pendrith at 45-1 to win for this week. You mentioned before that the around the green stuff has not been good for Pendrith, and that's very true, and it's very concerning. Putting has also not been good. But the ball striking for Taylor Pendrith is on another level. He actually ranks second in this field off the tee over the past 6 months behind some guy named Rory McIlroy. He is also 10th in approach in that time, despite a couple of guys above him having only one round of shot link data. So a little bit fluky there. yes, Pendrith has given away those gains with his short game, but the putting did look a little bit better with the players. Maybe he's slowly unlocking some things, had some weeks off recently to maybe unlock some stuff. So I think Pendrith, with the ball striking being as good as it is, I can't ignore him in a field this weird at 45-1, given it's Scotty and it's Rory, and it's kind of a whole lot of question marks beyond them. So 45-1 to me for Pendrith is enticing enough for me to bite in. How are you viewing Pendrith this week, given that the betting markets are kind of back off him, I would say once again?
Feels a little Finau-esque in a sense, where there's a bit of a, like a loss of interest, which may or may not be warranted. And I'm going to say I've been guilty, because Jacob Bridgman's also 45-1. And I almost was there. And then I kind of took another look and I was like, okay, Taylor Pendrith long-term over Jacob Bridgman for sure. Same number. So I have Pendrith in the non-outright section, but I have nothing against Taylor Pendrith for an outright at 45-1 this week. So I see the case for him. Whenever we're both aligned in Pendrith, it seems to go just great. So excited for that. But yeah, I think there's a lot to like with Pendrith.
He did cash some top tens, couple top tens in a row earlier on, at least. So there is that.
Yeah.
No outrights yet, unfortunately, but it's going to happen eventually. I hope. Figure out the short game, buddy. Win one for Canada. Let's see. Pendrith in the winner's circle. Now, you mentioned you got Pendrith in the non-outright section. My outrights being Pendrith 45 and Rory McIlroy 7-1. What market appeals to you with him?
Top 10 at plus 400. I think there's a lot of ceiling here, but the short game's enough. That the chipping itself is enough to sort of be a little bit more hesitant. Again, I'm fine at 45-1 as well, but plus 400 to finish top 10. I like that. He is sort of going through it with the short game. Until he had gained 1.6 strokes per round with the putter at the Players, he had lost strokes with around the green and putting in 3 straight events, which is not a good recipe for capitalizing on your upside and maximizing being one of the best ball strikers in a particular field. But his ball striking is really consistent, and I think you mentioned that he's the second best off the tee player over the last 6 months behind Rory.
Behind Rory. 0.96, I think, in that span. Yeah, 0.96. Rory's at 1.15.
Rory's driver is something to behold for sure. But Taylor Pendrith is third in strokes gained ball striking. So strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approach over the last 50 rounds, trailing just Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. Now, Scotty's at 2.29 from ball striking alone, with Rory at 1.6, and then Pendrith at 1.4 before a drop off to anyone else at 1.26. So he's kind of like the third guy in terms of ball striking. But I can't gloss over the fact that he is so far off the mark with the chipping that I would rather go with a finishing position than an outright if I could only pick one personally.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, that makes sense. My hope is that when it fits my argument, I can say, chipping is volatile. And I can say, chipping is volatile and figure it out. I know that's not entirely true here. It's been a long-term thing for him, and like long-term data does matter for around the green play. So we're pulling for your Taylor. Brandon has the top 10, 4-1. What are the non-outrights you got in this week?
I got to put in my Canada emoji for Pendrith, but then also for my next play, which is Mackenzie Hughes.
I mean, don't forget my 20. Section below. If you're adding emojis, you were going to add some more in a second.
Here. Okay, all right, there we go. So Mackenzie Hughes to finish top 20 plus 300. He's playing some good golf. It's sort of up and down, but some like top 36-ish finishes in some tougher events. But he's had success at Memorial Park in his career with the 7th, a 29th, a 16th, and a 14th. So 3 times he's been top 20 in 4 career starts. The ceiling mathematically is low. but not so low that this is sort of abnormal for him to finish inside the top 20. He is another golfer. I really want to find some time to look into some of this, but he does kind of feel like the type of golfer who's going to play well at certain courses because he's just, I don't know. It sounds like I'm like a big Mackenzie Hughes stan, but I feel for these golfers who are really good, but just can't elevate in different situations whenever very specific tests are being asked for them to solve. So Hughes at plus 300 to finish top 20. I see enough in the profile and my model likes it as well.
Okay. So you got Hughes top 20, 3-1, and you've got Taylor Pendrith top 10, 4-1. In again, accordance with Team Canada, my first non-outright is also a Canadian and actually the exact same number as Hughes. That's Nick Taylor, who is 3-1. And it's a very different reason to be on Taylor than it is to be on Hughes because Taylor is just on fire with the irons right now. He did struggle at the Players, but before that, he had gained at least a half stroke on approach in 8 consecutive measured events. He had not gained. He had gained a half stroke per round in 8 consecutive measured events. That does include his win at the Sony Open. Taylor's not an elite driver, but honestly, he can still gain strokes even without distance, which I think is pretty impressive always. And if you look at golfers on approach the past 6 months, you obviously have your Schefflers up there, but Nick Taylor's top 10 there as well. And you're getting him at 3-1 for a top 20. I like that quite a bit. So I'm going to go Nick Taylor as my first non-outright. I think we're all aboard the Canada train this week with 3 consecutive betting sections on Canadians. So can we just bet in general on Canada somewhere? Maybe not outright. That might be tougher, but overall, Taylor, Hughes, Pendrith, all guys were on this week.
Yeah, and Nick Taylor's 15th in strokes gained tee to green over the last 50 rounds, even with the off the tee numbers factored in there. So
yeah,
I like him a lot. I like him from a DFS standpoint. Have no issues from a finishing position standpoint either.
Yep, I'm there for DFS as well. Other non-outright I have, unfortunately, not a Canadian, but it is Max Greevy. Plus 330 to finish inside the top 20. McGreevy didn't work out last week for us, but most of his issues were around the green. He lost 0.68 strokes per round there, according to Data Golf. He was negative 0.94 at the Players, but still 20th. Actually finished with putting, where he lost most of his ground. It's possible, given that's 2 straight events, that the putter's in a downtick, but the ball striking for McGreevy is still really, really good. The putting for him is decent before that. It's a small sample because he was on the Corn Ferry Tour previously, so don't have the individual splits there from a putting perspective with him. Maybe just a bad putter, and I will feel bad about this eventually, but I don't want to say that quite yet. So McGreevy top 20 plus 330, a guy. Minon, I like him for DFS too. We'll talk about him in the value section, but McGreevy top 20 at plus 330, my other non-outright for this week, in addition to Taylor at 3-1. Any thoughts for you on Max McGreevy?
He's already played here twice. He was T19 in 2022 and then 67th in 2023. Hits pretty much every fairway and stripes the irons. So I think there's enough to want to get in there. So kind of prefer him from a DFS standpoint a little bit, but no problems from a finishing position standpoint particularly.
Okay. Let's talk now about some DFS because it is a fascinating week for DFS this week because the discussion you alluded to before, we have Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler at very, very high salaries. Scheffler's salary is $14,000. Rory's 13-2. If you put both those guys in a lineup, which is the first thing I did this week, $8,200 for 4 golfers. Is that a bridge too far for you, or are we selling out to get these 2 superstars in a lineup?
The hardest part is I can't find a lot of names that I like in the 7,000 range. And I can't find, I have a couple of names at 81 that I'd be fine with, but I don't know if there are 4 that I feel great about.
Yeah.
And if you're going to build this lineup, to me, I want a couple different combinations or permutations. I'm not mathematically inclined enough to know the difference there, but if I build
I
one
believe
lineup,
permutations considers the order of them, and combinations is just general combos.
okay, then
I could be
cool.
wrong though. That was like 10th grade.
That's like 50 years ago. So if I'm building this lineup, I don't just want to lock in, 4 names and then say, okay, I did my best there. I got one of these lineups. I would want to rotate in some other names. And then I feel like I'd just be picking and choosing names that I don't really care about, or not care about, but don't think they have a path to a ceiling. If you're playing both, let me ask this. What's your expectation in terms of finishing? Because one of them has to win. And where else is the other one going to finish where you're happy? Just a 1-2 finish? If it's like
playoff. I need a playoff.
So you have to ask yourself that question as well. Yeah. What's the best? What are you hoping for? Obviously a 1-2 playoff, of course. But if Scotty wins and Rory's T12, is that good enough for the restrictions it's going to put on you? So I do think picking and choosing is still going to be the preferred route to pick one, just based on how everything's so correlated with only one of these guys can win. The problem is I don't love that second tier, and you can call that second tier really Aaron Rye to I don't know, the 10K, 10,000 range.
Yeah,
I like Finau fine. I think he's more of a volatile win bet than someone I really want to go out of my way to play in DFS. That's where I'm struggling.
That's the exact same issue I'm having, which is why, because let's say you if you use both of them, they got to finish 1-2 basically in order to pay off. Yes, that's true. But also I have to identify who that second guy is. And I don't know, frankly.
Yeah. It's not easy.
Sure. In theory, it's oh yeah, well, I'll just skip over Rory and pick the other guy. Who am I going to pick instead? That's my issue, is where do I go elsewhere? So I've found some guys in the 7,000 range. You said I don't like them. I can tolerate them. Sure. And so what I would say is I kind of want to limit the number of lineups I do this week and be maybe I just use 3 and have this be one of them, where it's Scotty, Rory, figure it out. And then one of Scotty by himself, one of Rory by himself, and just kind of call it a day. Because I do feel like this is the right approach, but there just aren't a lot of combinations I can use to make it work. So I kind of want to be a little bit different, where it's I want to just pick my 4 guys in addition to them and say, enough. That's it. I'm calling it a day from there, because I can't figure out what else to do beyond those guys.
It really does feel like kind of going in circles of, okay, well, if I do it this way, this will make more sense, but then you can't find the names, and then you're back to okay, can I squeeze in Rory, or can I get back up to Scotty? It really kind of feels like I talk myself into it and then back out of it, and then into it and out of it. Mm-hmm. So I think we probably made the conundrum clear enough, where I do prefer to get to Scotty and Rory. I don't need you to tip your hand, but
I can't get to them in a head-to-head. No, I can't do that.
I don't think I can either.
I would love to, but I can't. I know I can't.
I think
I don't want to use Henrik Norlander and Danny Walker in a head-to-head lineup. So no, I can't do it in a head-to-head. I'll tell you that right now.
It gets tough quick.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. If you're picking, who are you picking between the two?
So Rory for the savings.
Yeah, I think that's where I settle in too. There should be a gap. I know we fought about it earlier on, but there should be a gap between Scotty and Rory, but $800 is enough where I'll see okay, I think there's better value in Rory. So it's similar to betting, where yes, Scotty should be the favorite. Yes, Scotty should have the highest salary. There's a big enough gap where I'll take Rory. So I think we're in lockstep there. When you go with just Scotty or just Rory, how far are you dipping down for your second guy? Because I'm not going to use anybody in the 11K range, I don't think, the entire week. I would need a lot of lineups to get there personally. I think really for me, it's the 10K range where things pick back up. What about for you?
Yeah, I don't mind Aaron Rye or JJ Spawn too much. They're really consistent golfers. Sung J M, I don't even want to say has a big ceiling. Like, it's not really the case. His irons just aren't good enough right now, but he still finds a way to be relevant. And then I kind of find myself first picking back up in the 10K range, and it is with Tony Finau. I've already given my thoughts on him. Who's the first name that draws you in this week?
Honestly, it's Taylor Pendrith at 10-3.
I
don't mind Wyndham. I don't mind Finau. Because Wyndham, like, we know there is a ceiling there. He has no floor. So, like, if it's a head-to-head, I'm not using Wyndham against you. But, like, could he win this event? Yeah, he could. Of course he could. Like, I just don't have faith in the health. I don't have faith in the irons right now. But, like, I know he has that ceiling. So, like, I'm cool with Wyndham. Like, the first guy I want to use is Pendrith at 10-3. So I think that what I would be fine doing is, like, Rory paired with Pendrith, 91.25 left for 4 slots. I don't mind that as, like, an approach. So honestly, I think I'm going Rory plus quote unquote balance is where I'd kind of settle on this week.
Yeah, and that might also just kind of work out where you can find, because you have some wiggle room, you find 800 to build a similar lineup, and then you get up to Scotty. Because it's not like we don't like Scotty. It's just, given the salary cap restrictions, I prefer Rory a bit. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else in the 10K range you want to shout out while we're here?
I think it's going to be Finau and Pendrith for me.
Okay, cool. I would probably go Finau second, but if I settle on Wyndham by Wednesday night when I'm finalizing my lineups, I wouldn't be shocked. I doubt we get any reports on how his neck feels, but there's no Shefty dropping bombs for me on Saturday night at midnight. But I wouldn't be shocked if I wind up going Wyndham over Finau, but we'll see there. I do think that the upper 10K, upper 9 range is okay this week. I don't know if I'll be here. I do think that Smalley is interesting at 99. I think Joe Highsmith is somewhere. Yeah, Joe Highsmith, 97. I don't mind him. Kitayama, 96, I'm fine with. I don't know if I'll be here super often, but like there are guys I'm cool with in this range. What about for you?
I think realistically, if I'm starting with something like Rory and Finau or Rory and Pendrith, I'm going to get back up to 1 or 2 of these names.
Yeah.
Which is still preferable than just, I don't want 4 golfers at 91.
Yeah.
I'd rather get back up here. So no issues with, Ben Griffin's fine, Mav McNeely, but I think I'm going to rank Smalley first there.
Okay.
Grazerman's pretty interesting, Highsmith. So I think this is, as we're doing this more, I thought it'd be awesome to build the Scotty Rory lineup, but I think the best route is going to be one of them with someone in the 10K range, or potentially if you really love Aaron Rye or JJ Spawn or Jason Day, something like that, that's also fine. But I think fitting in both is just going to be a little bit too difficult this week.
And it sounds like Smalley was your preference between this area and this range.
Yeah, I think Smalley's my preferred name in the 9K, the upper 9s at least.
I didn't have him there initially, but I think I should. So I'm going to go with Smalley as well as being my preferred guy in that range. I think he's just playing really good golf right now. So I'm aboard.
Things start to fall off.
They do.
95. Like they not off a cliff, but you feel the difference.
You feel the difference, but I still think there are guys I like in the low 9K range. Specifically, like 2 of my favorite golfers relative to salary this week are Jacob Bridgman and Nick Taylor. Bridgman's salary is 93. Taylor 92. We talked about Taylor before in the betting section. The thoughts there apply where it's his irons just really good. Bridgman's doing a lot of work with his short game, but he's also had better ball striking since the new year. So I think that's encouraging. It's mostly true off the tee, but the approach has been better the past month or so as well. So for 93, I don't mind Bridgman. And I think that both he and Taylor do grade out well. So we talked before about that Rory plus Pendrith start. It gets me to the low 9K range. Like, I'd probably just use both those guys. I think both of them are pretty fun. I don't think it's a lot of depth in this range. Like there aren't a lot of names beyond them I like, but these 2 I do like quite a bit. And like, I would label them as loves for this week.
No love for cousin Seamus, 94. He's
I
positive in
keep
all
getting all
four.
these push notifications from like Irish news stations about like how he's doing, and I don't know how this happened. I must have like Google News like has pinpointed me as being Irish. I'm like very small percentage Irish, but because I think they just listen and hear me say the cousin Seamus joke, I think that's why I'm now getting like Google News push notifications catered towards like Seamus Power and Shane Lowry updates somehow. I don't know how this happened.
I thought
I'm
maybe you just
flabbergasted.
accidentally turned on notifications for Seamus Power, but that you're getting them for Lowry too is kind of scary. But
Well, it's like one like news roundup of
okay,
like, oh, Shane Lowry did this, Seamus Power did this. I'm like, cool, I could probably use it in DFS anyway. So actually I don't hate it. Like I just stopped clicking on them. Maybe that's the
yeah.
issue. I don't know. Who can say?
Well, Seamus Power at 94 is positive in all four strokes gained areas over the last 50 rounds, coming off of an eighth at the Valspar. Pretty good iron player, like long term, can kind of come and go a little bit, but not the worst play there. Bridgman, I do prefer. Nick Taylor, I
Mhm,
probably prefer to
mhm.
Seamus, and then we get to Mackenzie Hughes at 9K. But this range, like I said, it feels a little different, but I think there's a little more depth maybe than you do.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think that I'm fine to live in this range a little bit more than
Okay.
I initially thought when we started the show.
Okay. So Hughes and Bridgman sound like they're your top two guys. Am I reading that correctly?
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go down below Hughes then. So $8,900 and lower. Where are you turning to here in a range that if we do decide to go with Rory plus Scotty, we're gonna have to live pretty often?
Max McGreevy at 89 jumped
Mhm.
out to me, but I think things kind of like slow down. Lee Hodges, as I mentioned, is in good form at 88. I wouldn't hate that. Sam Ryder's relatively interesting. He's made all 8 cuts this year at 87. But I one name that jumps out like, sort of statistically, Torbjorn Olesen at 85. He's the only golfer below 9,300 to be positive in all four strokes gained categories over his last 50. He's been a little bit spotty with how many events he's played recently, but he's also a good putter from within 15 feet. So I don't hate that. But do I really want to build around him in my main lineup? Like, not really. So I'd rather get up. Um, and that's kind of where I am before a couple like lower level plays that
Yeah.
are just to try to jam in Scotty and Rory.
Yeah,
Who are
I'm
you
very
seeing,
into
Doctor?
McGreevy. McGreevy 89, not a surprise given I like him for betting, but $89 for McGreevy. I think that he makes a lot of sense and probably my favorite like guy below 9K for this week. I'd feel pretty good about. So I like McGreevy. I wish Rico Hoey could make one putt. Um, like just one. The off the tee numbers are amazing. His approach numbers are very good. He is abominable on the greens. And if I could just like go back to our like old school heat check mentality of like, putting will regress towards the mean, I'd be like, yeah, Rico Hoey's awesome at 89. I've learned too much. And I can't click it. Um, he's kind of like discount Kitayama at this point. I don't know. I can't quite get there, but I thought about it.
Over under seventh percentile putting from within 15 feet last 2 years on tour.
Oh, I have to imagine way under.
Is sixth percentile.
Yeah. Who's worse?
Uh, we don't need to throw
Okay.
anybody under the bus.
Okay. Yeah. Rico, we're rooting for you, buddy. Make one putt and I'll be in. Anybody else in this range if we jump down to the low 8s and 7 range?
I think that's it for me.
Okay. What you looking at as far as the range will be in if we decide to go with the Rory plus Scotty lineup?
That's the hardest part is I don't really want to go into the 7K range. I just can't find it. But Justin Lauer at 81 and
Mhm.
also Rio Hisatsune at 81 kind of do enough. You still have to, you're basically playing two of those names and then can't really even get up to Olesen. So it's not enough just to say you play these two, you can make it work. But those are the names that I like. And if I really want to get my Scotty Rory lineups in, I might try to get a semblance of balance where I know it sounds kind of egregious where I'm playing like four golfers in the low 8K range, but rather than just taking swipes on some long shots in the 7K range, that might be my preferred route.
Yeah, I get that. I think there are a couple of guys whose irons I like enough to use them. Mac Meister's down here. Henrik Norlander 78 is one, and then Danny Walker at 77. Walker, of course, made that run at the Players. Played really well there. The irons were good at the Players and the Valspar. Also crushed it off the tee at the Players, which is why he was in contention for as long as he was. Don't mind hit 77. For Norlander, the irons are good. Everything else stinks. And maybe that's enough in this range. I'd probably just go both and then figure it out from there if I were to do Rory plus Scotty. So Norlander, 78. Danny Walker, 77, the guys I'm willing to use down here. And I guess I'd prefer that approach versus a bunch of guys in the low 8,000 range.
That's fine, but you're only getting back up to someone else. So like,
yeah,
it's not enough to care too much, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the real takeaway is Scotty and Rory sounds great in theory, but I think the pricing was done masterfully where you
rudely, I think. You can be nice. I will not.
Like, that's not even that different than like, and it's not a slight, it's not to say like, Justin Lauer's substantially better than Henrik Norlander. It's not like that. It's just like, it doesn't matter enough to me to care. So I want a little bit more of a better profile, I guess. I don't know.
I think that's fair. I understand that for sure.
It's a bit of a pipe dream to get Scotty and Rory together.
It is. It's a bummer. Okay. Who are your loves for this week then?
Loves are going to be Rory, Taylor Pendrith, Alex Smalley, Jacob Bridgman, and Mackenzie Hughes.
I'm going to go Rory, Pendrith. I'm going to go Bridgman, Nick Taylor, and McGreevy as my loves for this week. Let's finish up with the win picks. I believe you beat me in the bobblehead again this past week, which means you get to pick if you want to go first and fourth, or would you rather go second and third for our winners this week?
I will do the gamesmanship decision. I will pick first and fourth, and I will take Taylor Pendrith.
Oh, I thought you were going to take Rory.
No.
Interesting.
I don't think you would take Rory at just 7-1.
I'll take Rory.
Okay.
Yeah. Why not? I've got a lead.
Right?
You didn't win last week, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. Yeah, we were on a Okay. Yeah, I'm taking Rory 7-1. Okay. Value is value over the course of a full season. Like later in the year, if I had to make up ground, like, yeah, I'd probably skip over Rory then, but it's still early. I've got a lead. I'm willing to take Rory at 7-1 personally. The second one is tough because you took away Pendrith. My guy. Okay. Oof. I am trying to look at the golfers who are currently closest to being betting values at FanDuel Sportsbook, and I it ain't great, is what I would say. I'll go Wyndham, 33-1. Mentioned before, I like the upside. Like I like Spawn more than Finau, but I think that's more of a floor play. Like if I'm going to say, give me a healthy Wyndham in this field, it's probably got a higher ceiling than those other guys. I know, again, the irons are not good right now. Like there's a reason he's 33-1 in a weird field, but they've been better-ish recently. He's a guy who can mash it off the tee when he's on. I think there's enough there. So I'll go Wyndham 33 as my other win pick.
I'll go Tony at 33.
Okay. I figured he would. I didn't like him enough to like block you on him. That felt kind of, So, yeah.
I don't know. I got to make up some ground. I know it's a little early, but it's never too early at the same time. So,
all right. So I have Rory 7-1 and Wyndham Clark 33. You have Taylor Pendrith at 45, paired with Tony Finau at 33 to win for this week. Any final thoughts for you before we close up shop for the Texas Children's Houston Open?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. Look,
nailed it.
Way to end it. Let's just end it on that. I think we're good.
Going out on a high note.
Yeah.
They're playing this course in this event this week. That's all you got to know for sure. Back with you once again next week to break down the PGA Tour event. To make sure you get that as it is posted, subscribe to the FanDuel Research podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on the brand new FanDuel Golf Betting YouTube page. Leave us a thumbs up there, subscribe, and turn on notifications to know as these shows go up each and every Tuesday. Brandon, if people have questions for you on social media, where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and on Blue Sky at Gdula.
And I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your bets and your DFS lineups for the Texas Children's Houston Open. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.